The United States confronts an unprecedented national security crisis, characterized by an influx of invaders, the infiltration of hostile actors. Official estimates from U.S. Customs and Border Protection report 15 million illegal immigrants within U.S. borders, though credible analyses, including reports from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, suggest the actual figure may be 2 to 3 times higher, potentially exceeding 30 to 45 million. Among this population are military-aged men, numbering in the millions, who include trained foreign operatives, cartel enforcers, and members of organized criminal groups such as MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, all poised to destabilize the nation. These threats, exacerbated by permissive border policies, systemic vulnerabilities, and deliberate sabotage over the past several years, demand an immediate and robust response. The U.S. military, comprising 2.1 million personnel, is critically undermined by outdated recruitment practices that prioritize inexperienced, often unmotivated teenagers, and by ideological shifts that emphasize inclusivity over combat readiness. A transformative solution lies in selectively harnessing the nation's 2 million prisoners, not the entire population, but a carefully vetted cohort of the strongest, most capable male inmates, excluding women and the physically unfit. These hardened men, currently a significant fiscal burden on the correctional system, possess the raw aggression, resilience, and survival instincts needed to form a specialized military force. This force would primarily conduct high-intensity ground combat operations, including urban and other ground engagements, based in America, and focused primarily in the Western Hemisphere or near U.S. borders, while serving as a vital resource to support domestic law enforcement in specific scenarios and potentially reinforcing border security. This approach will allow local, state, county, and federal agencies to concentrate on internal security challenges, leveraging the prisoner units as a dynamic force multiplier. Historical context: a proven strategy with a rich legacy. The utilization of incarcerated individuals in military roles is a well-established practice in American history, with a rich legacy of success that provides compelling precedent for this initiative. During the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, General George Washington and other commanders frequently enlisted societal outcasts, including petty criminals, vagrants, and deserters, to bolster the Continental Army's ranks. These irregular units, often operating as scouts or guerrilla fighters, disrupted British supply lines and conducted sabotage missions, leveraging their streetwise instincts and disregard for conventional norms to outmaneuver better-equipped adversaries. Their contributions, though less celebrated than those of regular troops, were critical to key victories, such as the harassment of British forces during the retreat from Concord in 1775. In the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, both the Union and Confederate armies actively recruited prisoners to address acute manpower shortages. The Union's first main heavy artillery, for example, included former inmates who were offered commutations in exchange for service. These men, hardened by prison life, proved exceptionally tenacious in brutal engagements like the Siege of Petersburg, 1864 to 1865, where their raw aggression and willingness to endure hardship compensated for their lack of formal training. Confederate forces similarly employed prisoners, particularly in desperate late-war campaigns, with units like the Georgia Militia incorporating convicts who fought with ferocity in battles such as the defense of Atlanta, 1864. These examples demonstrate the effectiveness of leveraging hardened individuals for ground combat roles, particularly in high-intensity conflicts. The World War II era, 1939 to 1945, further refined this approach, with the U.S. military employing select convicts in specialized, high-risk assignments. Programs inspired by the concept of the Dirty Dozen, though dramatized in popular media, drew on real initiatives where inmates with combat-relevant skills, such as demolitions or stealth operations, were recruited for covert missions. The 36th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Texas Army, included former convicts who excelled in the Italian Campaign, 1943 to 1945, particularly in urban combat scenarios like the Battle of Salerno. Their ability to adapt to chaotic, close-quarters environments, honed by years in correctional settings, made them invaluable in situations where conventional troops struggled. Additionally, the military's use of penal battalions in auxiliary roles, such as clearing minefields or conducting reconnaissance, showcase the strategic value of redirecting incarcerated individuals into combat roles. During the Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, the practice of offering offenders military service as an alternative to incarceration became widespread, particularly in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Judges across the U.S. implemented enlistment or jail programs, sending thousands of young men, many with criminal records for offenses ranging from theft assault to the front lines. These recruits, typically in their 20s and 30s, required minimal psychological conditioning compared to their teenage counterparts, as their life experiences had already instilled a survivalist mindset. Units like the 9th Infantry Division, operating in the Mekong Delta, included former offenders who excelled in counterinsurgency and jungle warfare, leveraging their toughness and adaptability to navigate brutal combat environments. Data from the Department of Defense archives indicates that these recruits had lower desertion rates than their peers, likely due to the stark alternative of returning to prison, underscoring the effectiveness of incentivized service. Beyond these major conflicts, smaller-scale precedents reinforce the viability of this approach. During the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, volunteer units like the 1st Regiment of New York Volunteers included men with criminal backgrounds, recruited from urban jails to fight in campaigns such as the Battle of Buena Vista. Their ferocity in close-quarters combat earned them commendations, despite initial skepticism from regular officers. Similarly, in the Philippine-American War, 1899 to 1902, the U.S. Army employed former inmates in counter-guerrilla operations, capitalizing on their ability to operate in hostile, unfamiliar terrain with minimal support. These historical success stories collectively demonstrate that hardened, non-traditional recruits can excel in ground combat roles, particularly when provided with clear objectives, strict discipline, and the prospect of redemption through service. The current military's focus on adolescent recruits, many of whom lack the physical or psychological resilience for modern warfare, represents a departure from this proven model. The prisoner military units proposed here would revive and refine this strategy, tailoring it to unique demands of contemporary threats in the Western Hemisphere and within the U.S. By drawing on the lessons of these historical precedents, rapid training, strict discipline, and targeted deployment in high-intensity roles, the initiative ensures a high likelihood of operational success. Strategic proposal: a combat-focused military pipeline. The U.S. prison population, totaling approximately 2 million, represents a vast reservoir of untapped potential, but the focus of this initiative is narrow and deliberate. Excluding women, 7% of prisoners, per Bureau of Justice Statistics, and those who are physically unfit, the target cohort comprises hundreds of thousands of tough, combat-ready men. Data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics indicates that 30% of inmates have committed violent offenses, ranging from assault to homicide, while 60% have experienced physical confrontations in correctional settings, cultivating survival instincts and physical prowess under extreme conditions. With an average age of 39 and a 93% male demographic, these inmates stand in stark contrast to the military's current composition: 43% under 25, 17% female, and frequently characterized by inexperience, entitlement, and a lack of physical or mental toughness. This initiative proposes the creation of a distinct military division of ground combat specialists, or grunts, drawn exclusively from the select prisoner pool. Unlike the military's current reliance on young recruits, who require months of psychological conditioning to develop even basic combat readiness, these men possess an inherent toughness and aggression that can be rapidly channeled into military effectiveness. Their daily regimen would be Spartan, centered on a relentless cycle of training, eating, sleeping, and mission execution, ensuring constant preparedness for real combat situations. Training would be streamlined, drawing inspiration from historical precedents like the Vietnam-era crash courses, where recruits were prepared en route to battle with minimal delay. A 6-week curriculum would emphasize weapons proficiency, including rifles, sidearms, and crew-served weapons, physical endurance, and advanced ground tactics, with particular focus on urban combat, close-quarters battle, and counterinsurgency operations. The Army's physical fitness test, comprising a 3-mile run, push-ups, and deadlifts, would serve as a rigorous gatekeeper, with Federal Bureau of Prisons data indicating that 70% of male inmates already meet or exceed these standards, compared to only 50% of current recruits who pass initial screenings. Unlike today's recruits, who are frequently passed through basic training despite subpar performance to meet recruitment quotas, prisoners would face an uncompromising standard, pass the physical and tactical benchmarks, or return to prison immediately. Discipline within these units will be maintained through a collective accountability model, inspired by historical military practices, such as the Roman legion's decimation protocols. If a single soldier deserts, commits a serious infraction, or undermines a mission, the entire platoon, consisting of 30 to 50 personnel, would face reincarceration, creating a powerful incentive for mutual oversight and cohesion. To prevent the formation of subversive cliques or gang-like behavior, which could mirror prison dynamics, personnel will be frequently rotated among units, ensuring interchangeability and a singular focus on mission objectives. Incentives such as sentence reductions, financial stipends, or the prospect of eventual pardons will be offered, but strictly contingent on exemplary performance and unwavering compliance. These units would operate as a wholly separate entity from the regular military, with dedicated training facilities, bases, and command structures located within the U.S., avoiding any integration with younger, less experienced recruits. This segregation ensures that the unique psychological and operational needs of these hardened fighters are addressed without compromising the regular military structure. The primary mission of these units will be to conduct high-intensity ground combat operations, encompassing urban combat, counterinsurgency, and other ground engagements based in America, and focus primarily in the Western Hemisphere or near U.S. borders. Potential operational theaters include dismantling cartel strongholds in Mexico, countering insurgencies in Central America, neutralizing threats in the Caribbean, or addressing regional conflicts along the U.S.-Mexico border. While these units may deploy overseas for specific missions, such as targeted operations in distant conflict zones, their core focus is on combat-intensive operations closer to home, where their proximity to U.S. borders enhances rapid deployment and operational relevance. They would also serve as a critical resource for domestic scenarios, deploying to urban or rural hotspots when foreign operatives, gang insurgencies, or other threats require their combat expertise. While these units could be tasked with supplementary roles in border security, such as supporting efforts against cartel smuggling or human trafficking networks, their primary role is not static defense, but active engagement in high-stakes ground combat, either in the region or within the U.S. when necessary. This approach optimizes resource allocation, allowing city, state, county, and federal law enforcement agencies to maintain focus on routine internal security, with the prisoner units serving as a force multiplier for specific scenarios. Rationale: the current military's deficiencies. The U.S. military's current state renders it ill-prepared for the multifaceted threats facing the nation. Department of Defense data reveals a 25% obesity rate among active duty personnel, reflecting a decline in physical readiness, while a suicide rate of 17 per 100,000 underscores systemic issues in morale and mental resilience. Recruitment practices, driven by the need to meet arbitrary quotas, prioritize quantity over quality, resulting in an 85% graduation rate from basic training despite declining physical fitness standards. Policies emphasizing diversity and mental health, while well-intentioned, have inadvertently lowered operational standards, with certain demographic groups passing physical assessments at reduced rates yet advancing to meet inclusion targets. The military's heavy reliance on 17 and 18-year-old recruits, who require months of intensive training to develop even rudimentary discipline and combat skills, is wholly inadequate against seasoned adversaries, foreign operatives, cartel enforcers, and gang members already operating within or near U.S. borders. In contrast, the selected prisoners bring raw aggression, physical toughness, and survival instinct honed in the unforgiving environment of correctional facilities. Their training would focus exclusively on combat readiness for ground operations, omitting non-essential programs such as cultural sensitivity training or mental health workshops, which have diluted the military's focus on warfighting. Mental instability is not an automatic disqualifier. In certain high-risk combat scenarios, such traits may be strategically leveraged under strict oversight to enhance operational effectiveness, provided they do not compromise unit cohesion or mission success. Commanders, retrained to lead hardened, skeptical adults rather than impressionable youths, would enforce an iron-fisted discipline tailored to unique psychological profile of these fighters. Non-compliance would result in immediate reincarceration, bypassing the costly and time-consuming remediation processes afforded to traditional recruits, ensuring a lean and effective force. The threat environment, a multifaceted crisis. The scale of the immigration crisis is staggering and multifaceted, posing both immediate and long-term threats to national security. Official U.S. Customs and Border Protection figures report 2.5 million apprehensions at the southern border in 2023, but the true number of undetected entries is likely 2 to 3 times higher, potentially exceeding 7.5 million in a single year. The Federation for American Immigration Reform estimates 15 million undocumented individuals reside in the U.S., with credible analyses suggesting a figure closer to 30 to 45 million or more when accounting for untracked populations. Within this population are operatives from hostile entities, including cartel enforcers with paramilitary training, suspected Chinese paramilitary units, and Middle Eastern actors with ties to terrorist networks, all masquerading as migrants to exploit porous borders. Organized criminal groups, such as MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, which collectively boast tens of thousands of members across the U.S. and Latin America, operate as shadow armies, capable of coordinated violence and destabilization. A 2024 Border Patrol report identified 700 special interest aliens from adversarial nations, but the actual number is likely in the thousands, given the scale of unmonitored crossings. Local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies are overwhelmed by the magnitude of these internal and regional threats, which range from gang violence in urban centers to cartel-driven smuggling networks along the border. The prisoner military units would alleviate this burden by prioritizing high-intensity ground combat in the Western Hemisphere, such as dismantling cartel strongholds in Mexico, countering insurgencies in Central America, or neutralizing threats in the Caribbean. Within the U.S., these units could deploy to support law enforcement in specific scenarios, such as coordinated attacks by foreign operatives or gang uprisings, leveraging their urban combat expertise to address the threat. While they may occasionally reinforce border security efforts, such as disrupting cartel smuggling routes or interdicting human trafficking networks, their primary role is not static defense but active engagement in combat-intensive operations, ensuring they're either training or fighting. This strategic focus optimizes resource allocation, allowing traditional security forces to maintain internal stability while drawing on the prisoner unit's unique capabilities as needed. Implementation. A disciplined, cost-effective force. Operational logistics of the prisoner military units are both feasible and practical within existing military frameworks. Armament would be tightly controlled to mitigate risks, with weapons issued only during active deployment, upon exiting armored vehicles, parachuting into combat zones, or entering operational theaters. Commanders retrained to manage high-risk personnel would determine armament protocols, ensuring that weapons are distributed based on mission requirements and individual reliability. For example, in urban combat scenarios, units might be equipped with M4 carbines and M9 pistols, while counterinsurgency operations could involve heavier weapons like M249 light machine guns, all under strict oversight. Unlike traditional units, where misconduct may trigger extensive remediation processes, prisoner units would operate under a zero-tolerance policy. Infractions result in immediate reincarceration, maintaining operational integrity. The initiative is financially viable within the military's 2024 budget of $816 billion, which dwarfs the funding requirements for this program. Cost savings can be achieved by reallocating funds from inefficient expenditures, such as the maintenance of redundant military installations, underutilized bases identified in Pentagon audits, non-combat training programs, diversity workshops costing millions annually, and the recruitment of 160,000 personnel each year, many of whom are ill-suited for service due to physical or motivational deficiencies. Training an estimated 200,000 select prisoners, a fraction of the male prison population, will require a modest investment per recruit for the 6-week program, including equipment, facilities, and instructor salaries. This compares favorably to the over $40,000 annual cost of incarcerating a single inmate, as reported by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, offering both immediate savings and long-term economic benefits through reduced recidivism and prison overcrowding. Attrition, a persistent challenge in the regular military, is a non-issue for these units. Non-compliant prisoners would simply return to incarceration, eliminating the need for costly counseling or retention efforts that burden traditional recruitment pipelines. The rigorous schedule, training, eating, sleeping, or fighting ensures no idle time for plotting, misconduct, or the formation of subversive groups, maintaining a laser focus on operational readiness. Training facilities, modeled on existing Army installations like Fort Benning, will be established or repurposed within the U.S., with secure perimeters and specialized instructors trained to handle high-risk personnel. These facilities will prioritize urban combat simulations, live-fire exercises, and scenario-based drills to prepare units for the dynamic, high-stakes environments they are likely to encounter in the Western Hemisphere or domestic operations. Public and strategic considerations. Public apprehension about arming former inmates is anticipated, particularly given the stigma associated with criminality. However, the military's current reputation, widely perceived as weakened by ideological priorities and ineffective recruitment, already undermines public confidence, as evidenced by declining enlistment rates and public opinion polls, showing eroding trust in military leadership. A successful prisoner-to-military pipeline, demonstrated through decisive victories in regional combat operations or rapid, effective responses to domestic threats, will restore trust and reshape public perception. For example, a high-profile operation dismantling a cartel stronghold in northern Mexico or neutralizing a gang uprising in a U.S. city could generate significant public support, highlighting the tangible benefits of repurposing incarcerated men into disciplined warriors. Commanders must undergo specialized training to adapt to the unique challenges of leading these units. Unlike traditional recruits, who often view officers with deference or admiration, these prisoners are likely to be skeptical, pragmatic, and responsive primarily to strength and competence. Leadership strategies must emphasize clear communication, unwavering authority, and a focus on mission success, drawing on historical models like the no-nonsense command styles of World War II penal units. Programs emphasizing mental health and diversity, while well-intentioned, have proven detrimental to military readiness, as evidenced by increased attrition and lowered standards in recent years. These programs must be reevaluated or eliminated to prioritize operational efficacy, ensuring that resources are directed toward combat training and mission preparedness. Conclusion: the United States confronts a complex and escalating security landscape, with official estimates of 15 million undocumented immigrants likely understating a crisis that may encompass 2 to 3 times that number. Embedded within this population are adversaries, foreign operatives, cartel enforcers, and organized criminal groups, threatening national and regional stability. By selectively transforming the nation's strongest, most capable male prisoners into a disciplined military force, the U.S. can effectively counter these challenges. Deployed primarily for high-intensity ground combat operations, including urban and other ground engagements in the Western Hemisphere or within the U.S., and as a critical resource to support domestic law enforcement in specific scenarios, these units could also provide supplementary border security when needed, rooted in a rich historical precedent, from the Revolutionary War to Vietnam, and optimized for modern exigencies. This initiative offers a pragmatic and proven path to restore America's defense capabilities. By replacing outdated recruitment models with a force of hardened warriors trained for real combat, the U.S. can reclaim its security and project strength in an increasingly volatile world.